Kia ora, everyone. I have the absolute pleasure of talking with Lisa Tamati. Now, when I first started listening to podcasts, Lisa was one of the people that I tuned into. I listened to a couple of the guests that I've since had on, Paul Wood and Ben Warren. Lisa, I usually start out by asking people what they did in the weekend because that's usually where people follow their passions. But from the outside looking in, you're someone that follows their passions every day of the week.
Oh,
But what did you do last weekend?
I was in the weekend now. I never know which day of the week it is half the time because it's just sort of 7 days. 7 days is working and playing. I think yesterday when we talked on the phone, I was out running, so that's what I spent a good couple of hours doing yesterday. And apart from that, yeah, looking after mum and doing family sort of stuff and lots and lots of study and work. I'm pretty boring these days.
It depends on your perspective. I mean, we're forever learning, and if you can tap into that and follow your curiosity, it takes you to absolutely amazing places. Before we get into that, because I know that's one of the things that drives your life is following your curiosity, and I've even written a blog post about those little things that are pain in your life are often quite good to check out and look into further. But you said running, and that's what most people will know you from. When I talk to Zach Bitter, who's got the world record for running in a flat round around the circle for a long period of time, and he's not bad at the trails, but yeah, for us here in New Zealand, we know Lisa Tamati as the trail adventurer runner.
Visits more than trails, actually. Yeah, like I'm actually not that great on hilly trails either.
Yeah.
A sort of flattish desert, and I'm pretty good.
Yeah. So, what's your favourite race?
Oh God, that's a hard one to start out with, mate. I'm probably would have to be a toss up between the Badwater Ultra Marathon, which was in Death Valley in the USA, which I did a couple of times, or La Ultra, which was the world's highest race, which was 222 k's over the two highest passes in the world in the Indian Himalayas at extreme altitudes. So. And when I say favourite, they were just like monumental. They weren't exactly fun.
Yeah.
But they were massive challenges and epic moments in life. To do those sort of things, and with incredible teams, crews working for me and helping me. So yeah, those would be a couple of the highlights for sure.
I sort of not really at all have an idea of what you're talking about. I just did 4 days in the Kawika bush, and with a pack on your back and walking mountains and off track, it's hard and stupid, and you curse and whatever. But it is one of those things that's going to stay with me forever. Is that a bit like ultra running? Like this is.
It's no different at all, actually. Because I mean, and when people talk about ultra running, and you have this picture of someone tearing down a mountain or somewhere, it's actually not like that. It's very much a grind. It's very much, sometimes you're walking, sometimes you're crawling, sometimes you're running. It's just anything forward, So very, very much like what you've just done for 4 days. Not much difference at all, really.
Yeah. I've heard you say, and you set through some stuff, thanks very much, that the ultra pretty much ruined you for a while.
Yeah. I've definitely burnt myself out a number of times over my career, and that one, smashed the crap out of my body pretty much. For example, I came back from running that thing and lost 3 teeth in 1 week. It shows you what you're putting your body through is just pretty out there. And then of course I've had lots of problems with things like kidney damage from rhabdomyolysis again and again, and knock-on effects with adrenal burnout and thyroid problems and hormone problems and a whole host of nice nasty things that can happen when you're being stupid and pushing your body to the absolute limit. And I to be fair, I sort of, when I was younger, I thought, and there wasn't a heck of a lot of knowledge around back, when I first started 25 something years ago. There was no internet, there was no buckets of knowledge out there on this sort of stuff, and it was sort of a pioneering era in doing this. And I I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just, and I thought I would just recover. So when you damage your kidneys, you think, oh, well, that's bad, but 2 weeks later I'll be fine again. And then you were fine, but you're actually not fine. You know what I mean? On a deeper level, things were starting to add up. So I've definitely learned a few lessons along the way now, which I love sharing with, the athletes that I coach. So we coach a lot of people, about 700 actually around the world. And I love sharing those sort of insights and helping, hopefully, I'm older and wiser and been around the block a few times, and try and avoid those sort of pitfalls as much as possible. And ultra running, it's not always possible to it's sometimes on the limits of what's doable. But there are sometimes reasons where you want to be pushing the absolute limits. The thing is, you don't want to be doing this every week.
No.
That's probably a good thing to think about.
Yeah. Do you think that, like you say, you're in the pioneering days of ultra, and now it's becoming more and more popular? Like Joe Rogan has had a few of them on there.
Yeah.
And
show, mate. You know him?
yeah, shit, that'd be great, wouldn't it? But what I was getting at is, do you think that sharing of information is the reason why we're seeing, more and more people be able to do it at the elite level, more and more variation in racing, and people finding their niche? Like you say, you're the trail but flatter. Zach's the running around in a circle. Don't know how he does it. Courtney DeWalder is a mountain goat. What do you think that's really helped as well? The sharing of information and finding niches.
And the advent of the internet and social media and people, and then there's a danger side to that too, because if you're on Facebook and Instagram a lot and you're a runner, you're just going to see people running every damn day, and you're going to. Everybody's doing everything, and what am I doing? So you get a bit of that FOMO thing happening, and oh my god, I need to do more. So I think that's really helped a lot, and I think there's an absolute need in humanity because of our soft lifestyle, if you like. We don't have to fight for our food, or you might do, but most people are, go to the supermarket and buy their food, and they don't have to build their own houses. They don't have to clear the land. They don't have to do any of those things that our forefathers had to do. And so now we're disconnected from our connection to nature, and also our innate need to push ourselves physically, which I think we all have. And what happens when we don't do that, and we're sitting in front of computers and offices and these artificial environments with artificial lights, and we're not moving, is that for some people that becomes a massive problem and leads to a whole lot of chronic illnesses and diseases and obesity and all those horrible things. And for others, it leads to a need in their time off to go and do something epic or pioneering in a way, out in nature and pushing their own limits and finding out what they're about. And so I think it's covering off that basic human need to be in nature and find out what you're all about, like physically what you're all about, and mentally where you go to. When you're pushing the limits of what you're capable of, you're going to find out an awful lot about your character, and it's going to teach you so much more. So for me, running is really the byproduct. It's the journey that you go on the inside that is far more important, that will help you in life. The mental toughness stuff that you learn, the resilience that you learn, the discipline that you learn, the habits and the rituals and the stuff that you gather along the way on this journey, that's the real value of it, rather than running from A to B. That's where I see the true value in running.
Absolutely. Coming from a swimming background, there's a thing called black line fever, because you go to some strange mental places when you're swimming and staring at a black line.
Yep.
And having tried my hardest to be a high level sports person for from about 8 to 25, I was trying my, or maybe even later than that.
Yeah.
And then you find meditation and you go, oh shit, this is the same. but I'm not exhausting myself. Have you found meditation or used meditation or
Yep.
your experience there?
I just stood up from doing a yoga and a meditation before, and it's become a big you know, and becoming more and more important. And, you know, like with a lot of us, I struggle with the meditation, just quiet my mind down, but that actually means you need more of it.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not where I need to be with it. The power of meditation, I think, to cure a lot of our problems, and because a lot of our issues that many of us have are related to stress and this fight or flight response, that we're sort of constantly in the state of stress hormones, you know, with cortisol and adrenaline going.
Coffee.
Yeah, all of that sort of, you know, the phone being available to and all of this sort of artificial stress that no generation in history has been exposed to. And so it's even more important now that we go and we do those things that are going to quieten our mind, because it actually has a physical response. You know, like for years I saw, you should meditate and you should you know, be not getting stressed because stress is bad for you. But we didn't actually get the explanation of what does stress do. You know, like stress, I now know, you know, shuts down your immune system or slows it down. You know, slows down your digestive system, slows down all the rest recovery and repair systems. And if you're in a state of fight or flight all day, every day, which a lot of us are, you know, it's like running away from the tiger back in the days, which was an immediate threat, and we needed all our energy to go into our muscles. And that was why it took it away from the immune system and repair and all the digestive stuff and all of that sort of thing, and put it towards your muscles so you could run, which made sense from an evolutionary perspective. But now we've been chased by the proverbial tiger, which is now the shitty email from the boss, or the phone call that's just come in, or the kids that are screaming, or the deadlines that we've got looming. Those are the tigers now, and they're coming at us thick and fast. And this is causing us to be completely wound up all the time, which is really having a massive effect on our health. And this is where exercise and meditation and some basics like good hydration, and staying away from too much alcohol and coffee, and, you know, of course, medications and you know, that we don't want to be on. Obviously, we need some, not abusing them, and drugs and all of that sort of stuff can, you know, that can lead us down into a downward spiral or an upward spiral. And you might be surprised, a lot of the people that, you know, we work with, we just work on some very basic things for starters, like getting good sleep, meditating, quietening the brain down, hydration, good food, doing some exercise, and hello, half of the health problems disappear, you know, and pretty quickly. And this can have an effect, like if you're having stress, like I'm working with a client at the moment, we do something called epigenetic testing, and their biotype, because it's broken down into different health types, which is a discussion for another day, has a lot of tone in their body when the hypertone in their fascia and stuff. Now, if they're stressed, their whole body's going to be like, oh, you know, and we all have this to some degree, and some types are worse than others, and this is having effects on their back and on their digestive and their immune system and on and on. It's a knock-on effect. So yes, meditation is a big part of it, and I include running as a part of my meditation as well as the normal sort of what you'd expect to be meditating as well. I think both of those are valid forms of meditation.
Yeah. Well, people should listen to that again. Yeah. One thing you brought up was alcohol, and I think alcohol actually highlights one of the effects of the sympathetic nervous system. You said we go into this fight or flight, and that's pretty much our brainstem. So it basically cuts off your higher brain function, and 100% your prefrontal cortex. Now, when we speak about alcohol and why people make silly decisions and do silly things, and their muscles and stuff go weird, is because exactly that. And so that is the real danger of being hyper stressed, is that your thinking, your higher thinking, your understanding, your logic is gone, and your reflex and stuff is heightened, but only in a certain direction. And so you can be caught unawares all of a sudden, or you can, you know, make mistakes all of a sudden if you're in this chronic state. And so that's the buzzy thing.
Alcohol stress on a pretty, like on a physiological level, in regards to, you know, your prefrontal cortex and your logical thinking processes, do something similar then, don't they?
Yeah.
narrowing. You said something to me yesterday on the phone when we talked.
Yeah.
That it narrows when you're stressed, you lose your peripheral vision. You get this tunnel vision going on. And I've read that, but when you said it, because you're an optometrist, obviously, you said that physically they actually end up just being able to see sort of straight ahead. And I'm like, holy heck, really? Because that was an interesting aside, working with someone with a brain injury who's now got their peripheral vision back and wondering, how the hell did that happen? So that was a rabbit hole we went down yesterday. But again, that sort of shows that, when you are stressed, you do have tunnel vision. You don't see anything out the sides. And, you're not going to be able to react as well as you otherwise would.
Mm. Stupidly, I've had 2 boxing matches, and it is
not the hitting part.
And especially the first one. It was bouncy boxing in the middle of the Captain Cook Tavern. But that time, that was the first time. I think I saw the person's head, and that was about it. The whole garden bar at the Cook, if anyone's ever been there, was full of people. I didn't hear them, see them, witness them, or anything until it was all over. And then the second time, we'd actually done some training, and by the third round, and it was 3 rounds, I could actually hear my corner, could actually witness the people. And that's what they sort of talk about with martial arts, is this flow state of heightened, or I guess it's aggression or channeled aggression, channeled sympathetic nervous system, but at the same time, this peace and calm and ability to make decisions, which is your parasympathetic nervous system. And that's what it takes to be a high level, combat sport athlete, which is, a scary place as it is when we go to talk about concussion and acquired brain injury. But at the same time, it's why we're so fascinated by it, because it's so channeled.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was listening yesterday and learning about brain waves and controlling your brain and controlling your stress responses. And the guy was talking about an expert PhD in brain neuroscience. And he was talking about cats. You watch your cat at a windowsill looking at some prey outside. His body is completely relaxed and he's hyper-focused. His eyes are just following that prey. So he's in a state of SMR, I think it was called, the SMR state of brain waves. And he's able, when that cat is ready to pounce, because he's in a relaxed state physically, he's able to pounce, and because he's also relaxed and can completely focus. When we're under tension and we're scared, like you probably normally would be in a fight, you're not able to actually physically respond as well as if you were completely in control and completely relaxed, and then able to strike really, really quickly and really fast. And probably like getting to that mastery level of martial arts or boxing is about being in that state, like the cat in the windowsill watching the bird, fully relaxed on the inside, everything's going slowly but completely focused on the prey. And that's a really good state to be able to be, and being able to control that. I find it really fascinating to study things that are around controlling your mindset under stress and crises situations, and observing yourself when you've been in situations where you have or haven't reacted as you would like to, and then trying to reanalyze them. How would I have been better, reacting to that, and being able to learn to control to a certain degree your physiology so that you're not hijacked by it when the fear comes. And I've had to, in certain races where you've been in really dangerous situations, being able to control what your thoughts are doing and compartmentalize things and being able to function despite the fear. And then there have been other situations where I've done that really well. And then there have been other situations where I've completely, run around like a cabbage head and not done it well. and trying to understand what it is and how do you control those mechanisms is really an interesting area of study too.
So speaking of like a fearful thing, was it Libya you illegally ran across?
Yeah, I didn't run across it. This was an expedition, so this was even before I got into ultra running.
Yeah.
a 250k expedition, 4 of us, across the military barred zone. So it was, illegal, and we had to be really careful getting out of the oases that we were started in and coming back into civilization, because, and if we'd been caught, we'd have been in deep trouble, sort of on the border between Egypt and Libya, that sort of area. Dangerous place to be, but also an incredibly beautiful desert, like the most beautiful desert I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of deserts. Thousands of kilometers of them, and it was just absolutely mind-blowing. And we wanted to go through there, and we were hoping to do a book, which never actually came to fruition. But we only had 2 liters of water a day, which was the biggest problem, because we could not physically carry anymore, and there was no outside support. Obviously, we were doing this under the radar, literally, and 2 liters of water in a 40 degrees during the day type climate, and was absolutely insane when I look back at it now, and very naive and a bit stupid. And we had I had a backpack that was 35 kilos, and I only weighed 9 kilos or something at the time. So that was like 2/3 of my body weight. So I literally could not get up if I fell down. I was on my back like a turtle, unable to get up without the guys putting me on my feet. And we were covering 45 kilometers a day with 35 kilo backpacks in 40 degrees heat with 2 liters of water. I mean, you do the math on that. And it was pretty extreme. So that was my introduction really to deserts. And in the middle of this, the relationship that I had been in for 5 years blew up.
Oh, gee.
And boyfriend of 5 years decided to leave me. So it was awesome.
Gosh.
You have to read the book for that whole story.
Is it out now, or
I've got 2 books, and my 3rd one's coming out. So the first book, that story's in the first book, Running Hot. So I've got Running Hot, Running to Extremes, and my 3rd book comes out in March, which is Relentless. So, those are the 3 titles. So that story's in the first one. This is before I started ultra running and actually got into deserts and things after this, based on that experience. And we survived that, but I had some major damage physically, and also it was the end of a 5-year abusive relationship really, and that was a turning point in my life. That desert, it changed everything from then on. And so pretty out of it. Don't recommend. Don't do this at home, kids.
So let's go into Relentless, and we've been introduced by Chris Desmond from Uncomfortable is Okay in Wellington, who we've both sort of done each other's podcasts, but acquired brain injury is why I thought we'd have a good chat. And I've spoken about my concussion. I've had a couple of people on here about concussion. I'd love to get Dom D'Agostino on here one day, and he's linked to something that you're passionate about, and that's hyperbarics. Before we get into why that's useful, tell us about the frustration and starting point of finding these other modalities.
Yeah, so I had a situation, 4 years ago, almost to the day, my mum had a massive aneurysm, which is a bleed in the brain, and then subsequently also a stroke a couple of days later. So the aneurysm was like blood right throughout the brain, and blood and brain matter don't do well together. And she was left fighting for her life. They didn't expect her to live. It was a massive bleed. And we had a misdiagnosis immediately when we came into emergency department. She'd collapsed on the floor, massive headaches, which apparently was something the worst pain in the world that you can have when this sort of thing happens. You can imagine the brain cavity, like the skull, is a fixed thing, and you've got blood pouring into it, so the pressure's increasing, so your brain is just being squeezed to death. And the doctor said she's having a migraine, And the ambulance driver that had taken her up to the hospital had said, I think she's having a stroke. And he told the doctor this, the doctor ignored it. And so I didn't know anything at that stage. So, you listen to the doctors, don't you? Not so much anymore. So we listened to, and he gave us some painkillers and said, well, we'll just watch her for the next 4 hours. And, and then after 4 hours, she had another massive attack, like a real, and by this time I was desperate because she was in extreme pain, and I'd seen her have migraines earlier in her life. She used to have migraines regularly until she cut out gluten. So she hadn't had one for 20 years, and I knew that this was not how she would react with a migraine. So I got a friend of mine who's a paramedic who works up at the hospital periodically, and she'd crewed for me on many of my races and was an ultra runner and knew Mum very well. And she came up and she took one look at Mum and said, oh, she's having some brain, stroke or something like this. And so she went to the doctor and gave him what for. To get her a CT scan right now. And so he relented. And so after 6 hours, we got a CT scan and it came back blood right throughout the brain, aneurysm, massive, panic then to get her help. It took another 12 hours for her then to be transferred via the air ambulance to Wellington Hospital, because we live up in New Plymouth. And so 18 hours to get into surgery to have the stent to relieve the blood off start relieving the blood off the brain, which, the gold standard is 1 hour. So for something to survive this at the age of 74 was just absolutely amazing. And then, of course, she wasn't out of the woods when that happened. It was another 3 weeks in and out of coma. You have something called vasospasm. So when blood and brain matter mix, it causes the brain to spasm, and it can spasm for the next 3 weeks. And so you lose more and more of the brain tissue, and it can kill you at any time. So she would be in and out of coma, and then she'd have some function, and then she'd have less. And as the time wore on, she lost more and more and more of her brain. After 3 weeks, she stabilized and she survived, but she had basically hardly any higher function. She had no memory. She had a couple of words. She had no ability to control any of her bodily functions. Really bad state. So not much over a vegetative state, a little bit. Then they, rehab situation for the next 3 months up in New Plymouth Hospital after that critical phase. And in this time after that experience in ED, I was just going hard out researching. Dr. Google was my best friend, and I was studying everything I possibly could with about brain injury and about aneurysms and about the drugs that she was on and the stuff. And I came across something called hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And this is what they use for dive accidents, decompression chambers. And they've found that when you actually go the opposite way, you take someone down in a decompression chamber to being the equivalent of underwater. So the further you go underwater, the more pressure there is. So they call those atmospheres. And when you went down to, for brain injury, 1.5 atmospheres is the ideal state to go down to. When they did this and they put you on an oxygen mask, you would take up to 7 times the amount of oxygen into the body, and it compresses the oxygen molecules so that it can pass through the blood-brain barrier, which you have in your head, and it can actually target the cells in your brain that are alive, not the dead ones like their history, but typically around the dead ones are ones that are not functioning, but they're still alive, but they're not firing properly. And those are the ones you can target with hyperbaric. So I studied all this and researched it and read all the papers on it and books on it, and thought this is something that's going to help her. And I had, as an athlete, I'd done a couple of races up at extreme altitude, and I knew what the opposite of having oxygen did to your body. I'd had a hypoxic brain concussion from being at altitude and using a hypoxic tent in the preparation for one of my races, which is where it takes a part of the oxygen out of the air that you're breathing at night to try to get your body to produce more red blood cells so that you're better when you get to altitude. I went too far too fast and was sleeping at 6,500 meters every night. Don't do that at home either. And I'd ended up with typical, impatient athlete running out of time, trying to get the most, and pushed it way too far. Ended up knocking off my own brain cells, and I really had none to spare, I can tell you. Ended up with a hypoxic brain concussion. And I had all this bacteria in my body just go wild, because when you don't have enough oxygen, the bacteria goes crazy and proliferates. And I was seeing these things in Mum. I was seeing the infections and things like that happening, and she was sleeping at this stage 20 plus hours a day. And so in my mind, I went, I think she's got sleep apnea, which is when you stop breathing during your sleep phases. And the doctors ignored me again. when I said I wanted a sleep apnea test. And so I went outside them, and I got an outside consultant. I brought them into the hospital, got in trouble, didn't care. Did a test with her, and it came back severe sleep apnea, to the point that she was down at around 70% oxygen levels at night and knocking off her brain cells. And that's why the infections and why she was not having any improvement. So then we got her on the CPAP machine, which forces positive air pressure down your throat when you were sleeping and keeps the oxygen going, basically. And so then I started thinking, oxygen, okay. And then I discovered the hyperbaric. And as soon as I got her out of the hospital, which was 3 months later, and she's 24/7 around the clock care, 2 people. And I had a massive fight to get her home. They didn't want us to take her home. They said we had to put her in a hospital level care aged facility. And I was just like, that's not happening. She's coming home. I'm going to, look after her and so on. And they said, there's no way in hell you're going to cope with someone who's 24/7 care. There's just no way in hell. So I remember taking my books into them and throwing them at the social worker and telling them, I'm not leaving my mum. And there's no way that these people are going to be able to care for her like I will, not that these places are bad or anything, but I wanted to give her the optimum chance at rehabilitation. And I thought that if she's around her own things in her own house, in her own environment, with her own family, she's going to know that on some level, and she's going to feel loved. She's going to feel wanted. She's going to have memories come back easier. She's going to, all of these things. And I really came up against a brick wall, and I had to fight like crazy to get a little bit of resources to take her home, which was just like caregivers in the morning and in the evening for an hour to help with showering and things like that. Eventually I got my brother, who looks like The Rock, came up with me, and we got the resources we needed. I won't say anymore. And this is what really pisses me off, is that how many people don't have that. How many people go under the wheels of the bus because the system is made to get rid of you and put you in a home, and to, they're trying to get me to sign non-resuscitation orders and all this sort of thing. And she was terminal.
Yeah, that's that covering their ass thing, eh? They don't want, which is unfortunately how, like you say, it's a system issue, and they can't say, oh yeah, we'll let you look after them, and then things go up, pear-shaped, and you wouldn't, but you come back at them saying, oh, you shouldn't have let me take them home. That's the unfortunate risk for them, eh?
Yeah, and I get it that a lot of people wouldn't have been able to cope, but I had shown them that I would cope, and that we had a really amazingly strong family, that was there, that was going to be there, and they just told me, you'll burn out. So they took all hope, and there was like no hope that she's going to improve. She'll never do much of anything again. Her quality of life is always going to be this bad, to make her comfortable. And, like Chris Desmond's podcast is called Uncomfortable is Okay. And I'm definitely about, we don't do comfortable. We don't do comfortable. We push, we challenge, we fight, we overcome. This is what we're all about as a family. And I don't do comfortable, because comfortable leads to death, in my opinion. And it's certainly in a case like this, where you have to fight with every ounce of your being to do this. So I eventually got her home, and I approached a dive company of all places who had a hyperbaric chamber, because these things don't grow on trees. They're really hard to find access to.
Yeah.
And these amazing people let me use the chamber. I had to sign legal waivers and so on. Every doctor that I talked to was really negative about it, and it's bullshit, and it's not going to help, and all this sort of stuff. But the research that I'd done had said it was, and there is massive clinical data. If anyone actually wants to go and have a look, do so, because you'll find that it's really beneficial for brain injury, but also for things like multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, cancer, wound healing, which they use it in New Zealand for wound healing, for burns, for gangrene at Auckland and Christchurch hospitals, but they don't use it for brain injury, and you can't get access to it, which is absolute travesty. Anyway, I got her 33 treatments at this place, and then the chamber had to be taken off. So I got her out of the hospital, put her through this thing 2 hours a day, roughly, and a huge thing to do with someone so fragile. Like, being awake for an hour was a massive thing for her. We would stick her on a forklift and put her into this big chamber. And everyone thought I was completely nuts, including my own family, but they went along with it because we had nothing else, you know, and there was no other hope on offer. After 33 treatments, my mum started to wake up, is the way I can express it. She started to have a flicker of intelligence behind her eyes. She started to try to talk. She tried to move her upper limbs more. She was trying to communicate. She was, and so I knew that it was working. And then the chamber got taken off on a contract. And so I had to mortgage the house. And then I bought a hyperbaric chamber, what they call a mild hyperbaric. So there's 2 levels that you can get, the hospital medical grade ones and big and the mild ones. Now, if you're a private citizen, you can't get one of the big ass ones because of the regulations around it. You have to have hyperbaric technicians. You have to have, because oxygen is in itself a bomb, basically there was all these legal rules. So I did what I could. I got what I could, the best quality that I could. And I put her through another 250 sessions over the next couple of years. And while I was doing this, I started to develop a therapy plan. And I tried just to stay one step ahead of her recovery. So I studied everything from nootropics, which is brain-enhancing drugs and supplements. I changed her diet, did the hyperbaric, did physio, did things like functional neurology to the best that I could via YouTube. A lot of the time I was learning stuff from, because I couldn't get access to the people that I knew were available overseas. I tried to get her stem cells, couldn't get that. I tried to get her into a program in America, but I couldn't get her to travel there. It was too difficult. It was everything I tried. I tried infrared light therapy, you name it, I did it. And I'd just weigh up the risk and the reward, and if it wasn't too risky and I think that there was a reward, I'd try it. And the upshot of it is, like, now 4 years later, my mum is completely normal again. She is reading, writing, walking, talking. She's got her full driver's license. She's got her full brain power back. She's pre-aneurysm levels on all her tests. She has a slight limp when she walks. We're still working on her balance and her the right side of her body. She had an extra stroke on top of the aneurysm, and so she has a little bit of a problem on that side. That side of the body doesn't react, and we're working on that constantly. But she's got her, full back into life and loving life again, and independence, and and to come from not being able to put food in your mouth, not being able to know that I'm your daughter, not being able to recognize a picture of a giraffe or something, to becoming normal again. I can tell you that's a pretty epic journey that we've been on. And so I have written a book about this, and it's called Relentless, and it comes out on the 11th of March. And if anyone's interested, you can pre-order that now on my website at lisatamati.com. Plug for the book. So,
hey, it's good. We'll have that in the show notes. Not that it's hard to find, but yeah. This book's nearly killed me getting it out because I'm not the greatest writer, and I had to have a lot of help. And but it was so important to me to get the story out there, because there are so many people that are going to benefit from this. And I had a couple of books that really helped me when I was in the deep dark spaces with mum and everyone telling me there's no hope. And there was a couple of books that I'd read. Dr. Norman Doidge, who's a neuroscientist, had written about plasticity of the brain and how it can adapt and change. And some of the stories in there that really gave me hope that I could do this. And even though she was older than anybody, in any of these studies or any of these, and neuroplasticity is, declines with age, I believed I could because somebody had done it somewhere. Their name Norman Doidge has come up before. When we had Marky, or his director at work, that does visual training for people and deals with acquired and traumatic brain injury. That's exactly what he says about the neuroplasticity. So amazing synergy there. Yeah.
I have to talk to him then, or talk to you about the next level in mum's recovery then, because I need more help with the functional neurology side.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. But yeah, so this book's really important for me because I want people to be empowered. I also want people to understand that they have to take responsibility for their own health. Don't rely on our medical system. Don't rely on the local doctors. And this is no indictment of any particular person, or there are just limitations to the system, limitations in resources, limitations in time. Also, the fact that the world's knowledge is doubling every 5 years. So how can anybody keep up? So if you have a really deep specialized problem, you better go and do your own deep research, because your local doctor hasn't got time to go and do that. And if you understand that, and it takes, I'm lucky that I learn quickly as far as, like the science and stuff, and I can process a lot of information, and I know how to do this, which has been a blessing. But I've learned it along the way too. Like I have no background as a doctor. I have no background in any of this sort of stuff. But you don't need to. You can go and find the people. You can go and find online pretty much an expert in everything and learn from them. And you'll run up 100 rabbit holes and they'll lead you nowhere, but there'll be one that'll take you further than anybody else will take you. And you have to go all in on this. And so this book it's a book about mental toughness and mental resilience and persistence and overcoming obstacles that will teach people a lot of things about that. But it's also about the therapies that I used in regards to brain injury. But more than that, it's about an attitude to life and taking responsibility for your own health and your family's health, so that you're not just blindsided by the system that isn't perfect. And that, we have limited resources. There's not enough money in our system. If you're over 65, you're going to be put to the back of the list on a lot of things. So if you don't fight, and even for younger people, you still, you've got to do your own research. You've got to have an advocate, advocate for your loved ones if you're ever in a situation like this. And don't be too polite. I was too polite in that emergency department. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what to ask for, and I didn't scream and shout loud enough. Sometimes it's the squeaky wheel, it's the oil.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a case of that over Christmas. And again, it goes to the limitations of the system. The referral went out, the patient got the referral when they got back from their GP, and she was on the phone on the Monday, and I just basically said to her, you need to go back. They didn't have the information there. They haven't done what I've asked for. You need to go back. And understandably, she was a bit concerned with the way the system works, and being that, I'm an optometrist and I had referred her to the ophthalmology department to deal with her eyes. The real issue was with her medical state, and it was just like, you're allowed to go back. There's always someone acutely there. If there's not, they'll put you up to the hospital. If your GP is not there, they will and should see you. If they don't have the copy of the referral, you've got it. Take it with you. Show them the photo of your eye and what that means, and the things that I've requested, and they'll understand. They should. You don't want to say they will. They should understand the severity of this. And you've been there. They've treated you. You have not got better. In fact, you're telling me you're worse. Yeah. This is a headache. This is vascular. Get back to them and find out why this is going on. And it's funny you say about picking up on stuff, and it is partly about exposure. And like you said, you don't have a doctor background, but you've pushed the body to the extremes of physiology, and you've seen where it goes wrong, and you've got things to parallel to it. Now, life is all about exposures, and like I didn't get into optometry, and so that forced me to go do a Bachelor of Science, and I did some neurology and reproduction. So two massive systems. Yep. And then so I did optometry with this lens in the back of my mind, excuse the pun, of the brain and the endocrine system and stuff like that. And so that's really shaped my life. And then going back to this hyperbaric stuff and the CPAP machine, it's weird how life works. These people, this South African couple who from Auckland, for some reason, were seeing me in Te Awamutu, and the wife, I was suspicious of type 2 diabetes, and she might have even had it or something, and we were talking through, and this guy was an engineer in the CPAP lab at Fisher & Paykel. Yeah. And he all of a sudden just pipes up from the corner about oxygen, the mitochondria, energy, how the brain becomes insulin resistant, how if they can fix the mitochondria, they fix the sleep apnea. And then, this year there's been a report to say that glaucoma has a massive link with sleep apnea. Sure enough, sleep apnea has a massive link with high blood pressure. It's all metabolic.
Yes.
And
Mitochondria.
yeah. And it's like now the amount of sleep studies that I'm requesting has just, multiplied.
This is exciting stuff, mate. This is exciting because you're so right. And do you know Dave Asprey on Bulletproof Radio?
Yeah, gotcha.
Obviously, but a lot of the stuff that he talks about in his latest book, Human. I don't agree with everything Dave Asprey says, but there's a lot of stuff that the research that he has is just, and this is the thing, you've got to pick out from people the bits that you believe and that you see repeated from different people, different like you telling me that as an optometrist, that excites me because that's a correlation between epigenetics and ophthalmology and metabolic disorders and it starts to crisscross. And what I love doing is seeing patterns across different things when I'm studying. So we do something called epigenetic testing, as I said earlier, in our company, and so we're health coaches and do train a lot of athletes as well. But we do, so epigenetics is the study of how the environment that you live in, your food, your water, your toxic load, your everything, your air, your sleep and all that affects your genes. And it looks at giving specific recommendations based on your epigenetics and your biotype and how it's expressing now. So how your genes are expressing right now. So things like exactly what the right foods are to eat for your body, the exact times of the day, like chronobiology. So it's taking 15 areas of science, neuroscience, chronobiology, embryology, anthropometry, even Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine. All of these things have been, all the knowledge from all of these different sciences have been put together into one tool, 10,000 algorithms behind us. It's a really deep level tool, but it gives us specific recommendations for our clients exactly on things like how their mind works, which parts of their mind they use the most, the way that they process information, the work environment that they'll do well in, the social environment that they'll do well in, the nutrition, the what times of the day is a really big one, what the dominant hormones are and the neurotransmitters and how these affect different areas of their life and their personality. And it starts you start to see a real big crossover between what were previously siloed areas of medicine, endocrinology and, reproductive and this and that and all the other types. You're starting to see interrelationships between, because we are complete whole people. We're not one, if you go, give an example, if you put a lady on the pill, reproductive system is shut down, basically. And this is having massive effects on things like her decision-making ability, her ability to pick the right man in their life.
That one.
Far-reaching things that nobody has ever told. I certainly wasn't told when I was put on the pill for menstrual problems as a young girl of all the effects it can have, And now they're starting to understand all that interrelatedness. And this is a really exciting time in history to be alive in regards to all of this, because the next 10 years in the medical world or in the health and the preventative world is just going to be amazing, the stuff that we start to get access to and the personalization of the therapies. And so there's no just one size fits all. I mean, even as trainers, like training people, we used to, you train two people with the exact same program, give them the same diet to follow, and you get completely different results. And your tendency was to think, well, one's following it and one's not. But that's not the case all the time. They can both be following it and getting completely different results because they have different different biotypes. And this person needs to be trained this way and this one needs to be trained that way to get the different results. And now we understand that and we have that knowledge, and then we can actually specifically make the program work for that person in regards to their food, in regards to their training, into the way that we motivate them. Give an example, like mum, who is what they call a guardian body type, is a very nurturing. She has a lot of prolactin, which is one of her dominant hormones, which means she's a very nurturing, caring, look after the world person to the detriment of her own health many times. Prone to cardiovascular disease, prone to weight gain. These are sort of typical things for her biotype. She's not motivated by a sporting challenge. You know, she's not motivated by me saying, come on, we're going to go harder, we're going to win this race. Or, you know, even as a young woman, she was not motivated by that. If I say to her, your family are depending on you to stay around and be alive, and you've got to look after your granddaughter, and if you don't do this training today, and if you don't eat right, then you're not going to be able to do that. That will get her ass moving. Yeah, that will make her motivated. Whereas for me, I'm a crusader activator, which is the other two types. I'm very motivated by sporting challenge. I'm very much mission focused, mission based, sometimes to the detriment of everyone else around me. Can be very, you know, single mind, head through the wall type person, risk taker. My dominant hormones are like adrenaline and dopamine. So I have a certain personality type. When I understand that, then I know how to motivate me. And the whole fitness industry has been run typically by people like me. And then you go and train people on the other side of the wheel. They have a wheel. And it doesn't work. And you're going, works for me. Why isn't it working for them? You know? and this is amazing information we have now why it doesn't work. And we know how to help people. So that's a really, really exciting program that we're using at the moment as well.
Awesome. I'm glad we got that across. And because I'm conscious of the time, you've got someone to meet with.
Client coming in, 10 minutes. So we better wrap it up. But you know, I would love to talk to you on my podcast. So my podcast is Pushing the Limits. If anyone wants to check that out, and I'd like to get your insights on the whole eyes and brain and all of that sort of good stuff, and do a deep dive in there.
Awesome.
And thanks very much for having me on your show. I really appreciate the work that you were doing in spreading these great messages and having great, you know, lots of really cool guests on your show that share some good insights, because I think that's really, really important. Yeah,
no, and it's great being able to have conversations. I was talking about the podcast with somebody last night. You know, there's huge potential when it comes to podcasting, but the real hack is you get to have an amazing conversation with somebody for an hour or two, and if anybody listens, it doesn't matter.
I started my podcast selfishly for this reason, to help with my mum and to get access to the best experts around the world, and it's been the most amazing ride. So you guys, you know, get into your podcast, man. It's like having a university in your pocket.
That's right. Yeah, I listened to Peter Adair, and I was listening to something yesterday, 2 days ago, about fish oil. Yesterday was about fructose. I'm just like, man, you know, you don't need to go to medicine, or you do to treat people, but you don't need to do medicine anymore to know this stuff.
You have to have a certificate and a doctorate and all that sort of good stuff, and that's great. But as far as the latest research and stuff goes, go to podcasts.
Yeah, great. So you've got your podcast, lisatamati.com. We'll obviously have links to all your socials.
Pushing the Limits is the name of the show, and lisatamati.com is my website. Yeah,
and that links to like Facebook and Instagram.
So on Facebook and Instagram it's just at Lisa Tamati, and we have 3 flagship programs. We have our online run training academy, Running Hot, and then we have the Epigenetics program, and we also have a mental toughness course that we, you know, which is all about developing resilience and emotional resilience and physical stamina and you know, the mental side of the game.
And they can see how you're a diverse person, and they can also get you along to speak with small groups, large groups, dinners, keynote speaking, emceeing, organising the thing.
Do way too much and way too scattered sometimes. But that's what I do basically, is I travel and I speak and share some of these experiences with people and hope that it actually helps them in their life, you know. Share some thoughts.
Well, you telling me the story of your mum, it actually brought tears to my eyes. So excited for that book to come out, and people should definitely get a hold of it. And like you say, they can pre-order it now. What we generally do to finish off is, if you've got like a quote or something that you kind of directs your life and hasn't really done you wrong and you keep coming back to, if you've got anything or something that you learned out of this massive experience, and you've been through a lot of massive experiences, some of them on your own doing, and others that it's just what happens in life. But what would you sort of leave us with?
Well, there's a couple, but it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
If we go through life being too fearful of failing and striving for perfection, you're not going to reach your potential. Mm-hmm. If you take action and then iterate, change, develop, if you fail, it's feedback. It's only feedback. And if you're pushing the limits of what's possible for you, you are going to fail. And that is okay. Being okay with that and not being embarrassed about that and not trying to win all the time. Failure hurts, and I've failed on many occasions in businesses and relationships and races, and it wasn't nice. It was horrible sometimes, but there was always a learning from it. And life is a rich tapestry, as they say. And if we just go through trying to pick the best horse to bet on all the time, we're not going to actually reach our full potential. And so having that ability to push and jump when you're scared and go, obviously prepare, obviously do all that sort of risk mitigation stuff and all the rest of it. But taking chances and not being afraid to fail. And if you do fail, learn to get back up. If there's one thing you learn in life, it's how to get back up after a failure or a knockback or a setback or a situation, and turning everything into a silver lining. Like me doing this book with Mum's story is me turning that story into a silver lining. It's me using that horrific experience that I never wish anyone to go through, but it's done because it's going to help other people who are unfortunately going to go through similar things. And it doesn't have to be just a brain injury. It could be any drama in life. And so that's my way of paying it forward, and it's my way of turning something terrible into something good. And you can always do that. I mean, earlier this year we lost, in March last year, we lost our little baby boy, Joseph, who was born at 6 months gestation, and we had a surrogate mum. And this was a journey that I'd pushed hard. I'd gone all in. Like with Mum, I went all in and we won. And with this situation, I've been trying for years to have a child. I've done everything possible. And we finally had this wonderful surrogate, and things were going great until he came early and died in our arms, And that was, I really struggled to find a positive in that for a while, because it was a horrific situation. And I felt like I had pushed so hard to make this happen, and I'd caused the suffering. But after a few weeks of grieving and going through this process, I realized that this is what life, you cannot predict all the variables. What you can do is go all in, and then you can hope for the best. And sometimes the worst happens. But you can always find some little precious thing. That our little boy Joseph left us so many blessings that we're not even, I'm not even like it's just some beautiful things that have happened out of it, like the connectedness to my surrogate family now. Her kids are like my kids, and our extended families are connected. And now my husband has changed his whole outlook on life and what he's capable of. And he's like, stuff it, my son didn't get to live, so I'm going to. There are blessings that our little boy left behind, even in this horrific situation. And it's having that resilience to stand back up again and go again, no matter what happens to you. And if you can do that, you're going to have a much more fulfilled life and reach a lot more of your potential, and just being able to stand back up again. It's just really, really important. And for us in that situation, it's about honouring what he missed out on. It means living life full on. you know.
Yeah.
Resilience. I think that would be a good way to part ways, is to, guys, don't fear failure, get up again, go again when you do, and just be strong.
Lovely. Think it's it's a thing that you feel, and it's a great example, I guess, of of life. So
Shit happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes shit happens, and you can't control all the variables. You can just give it your all, and that's all you can do. And then you can, hope for the best. And sometimes you can beat the odds, like with Mum, and that's, and none of us know how long we're going to live for. But every day that I have with her is special now. Every single day.
Lovely. Right, Lisa, I'll let you get to your working job.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Can't wait to have you on my show. Thanks, mate.
Legend. Cheers.